Hello, good to see you. This story is called The Miracle of Miss Evelyn Howard, and it's a story on top of a story. It's in my collection called Secret Lives. So, The Miracle of Miss Evelyn Howard. The highway slid beneath the silver bus. Reflected in its tinted windows, gentle hills spotted with red churches and white barns rose and fell. Inside the bus, people with hats and magazines unwrapped candy bars and touched their sideburns. "That your mama up there?" the old man whispered. Joyce nodded. "She ever say she wants to cut your head off?" Joyce looked down at his big hands, as big as father's. Across the aisle, Miss Evelyn Howard glanced at her two young girls, who should have been three young girls, and then back one row, keeping an eye on her baby, Joyce, who was 5, now sitting next to the withered, white-bearded man. She yawned, fingered her graying bun, and wondered at the abundance of old men in the world. Joyce grew into a big boy and then a small man with wide hips. He repaired air conditioners, some of them broken. He resembled his father, Gray, a man of complex thoughts and notions, who smoked menthol cigarettes and contemplated fabric. Joyce's two sisters, Trista, with a red mole beneath her nose, and Jewel, with a white patch on her neck, grew to stellar heights, surpassing the 6 feet of his dear mother. Evelyn. Joyce enjoyed many things, especially harder candy, which he felt he deserved. But what he always loved most was his mother, and not his father so much, who had had an adventure worth noting before Joyce was found beneath the cabbage leaf. And the girls had left, Trista to map caves in New Mexico, and Jewel to manage wine cellars in Missouri, leaving Evelyn to care for Joyce, and Joyce to care for Evelyn. Then, one day in November, Evelyn requested to be moved from the city of Hoover, from the yellow house on the corner lot, from the finished basement where husband Gray had grown leeks and buckets of sand and painted angels on seeds. Joyce protested, cried, and had a long talk with Evelyn. But after a private meeting with a Mr. Khalid, she left for Baxter's assisted living and long-term care on a stretcher in a private ambulance, lights flashing but no sound. Joyce visited her Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and every other weekend, and cried each time he left, always kissing her on the neck and waving, even though she looked away toward the window. Her high blood pressure, her weak hip, her loss of appetite, Joyce told the postman. It was nurse's aide Debbie D., a matching set of small cold sores in the corners of her mouth, who found Evelyn, rails down, long body turned sideways and draped off the bed like a slice of cantaloupe. There seemed to be no sign of a struggle. Sticky blood soaked the sheets, ran down the side of the bed, and gathered in a pumpkin circle on the floor. Bloody footprints danced in every direction. Evelyn's face bore a dark color, as did her bare legs. A set of yellowed teeth balanced against her nose. Debbie D. wondered at the shiny, liver-colored bag of flesh hanging from Evelyn's private area. She pulled the gown down, but that didn't cut the mustard. She walked to the linen cart to fetch a clean towel, and on the way to fetch a towel, determined herself to tell Nurse Richter about the strange condition of Miss Evelyn Howard. Meanwhile, nurse's aide Curtis, in white pants with legs like cannon barrels and lips pursed into a thistle, came out of the bathroom inside Miss Evelyn's room, stepping gingerly. He had been the first to be shocked at the state of Miss Evelyn's private area. While in the bathroom to flush a thing very much like a thing that cries, and also to fetch a clean towel, he had heard Debbie D. enter the room and, being afraid, waved his hands mightily above the toilet to bring quiet down upon it. The condition of Miss Evelyn's private area raised many eyebrows, as did her death. Debbie D. informed Nurse Richter, who could not wear tennis shoes, who informed head nurse Swan, the only person who could make the microwave work, who then informed the administrator, Mr. Khalid, a fellow from Qatar who spoke French, among other things, and who had personally visited Evelyn the day before she moved into Baxter Assisted Living and Long-Term Care. When his cell phone rang, Mr. Khalid just happened to be at a rest area on the Florida-Alabama state line, enjoying a free glass of orange juice with his Ukrainian wife, Lavra. In Hoover, a town very much like sliced cheese. Excuse me. In Hoover, a town very much like sliced cheese, the condition of Miss Evelyn's private area became a topic of conversation and quickly commandeered the Hoover City blog, overshadowing a ketchup packets for sale scandal at the elementary school. A blogophile himself, Joyce received badly the news of his mother's change and her unsatisfying end. He first thought of her length, then of her watchfulness, then of her tuna salad with a hint of mayonnaise and white pepper. And then he remembered the bus rides to visit his father. And then he remembered the old man with the white beard. "You know she cut off your daddy's head," he whispered. "But Daddy's in a special hospital in Tuscaloosa." "Yes, he is, but he ain't got no head," the old man grinned. "Yes, he does," said Joyce, kicking the bus seat. "You think I'm the devil?" he asked. "Well, I'd have to ask my mama," said Joyce, swinging his feet. "She'd say you're the devil." "No, she would not," said Joyce. "Once a man, twice a baby," the old man replied, touching his sideburns. Evelyn's surprising condition had surfaced on Tuesday, the day Joyce normally fixed heat pumps and read medical journals and aquarium magazines in the finished basement. Debbie D. had discovered Evelyn just after the shift change at 7:20, or 7:20-ish, according to blogger HeebieGeebie09, or at the parallaxian moment of Kevlar truth, according to AL201189BMH, a frequent presence on the city blog. After Mr. Khalid answered a call from the Hoover Sentinel-Bee about Evelyn's condition, drank more orange juice, and then took another call from an irate family member about whether or not the air conditioning at Baxter's Assisted Living and Long-Term Care had been fixed. He took leave of his wife, fancying a promenade à pied along the dog-walking path, hoping to acquire a decent signal. Having trouble mustering one bar, he resigned himself to call Joyce personally as soon as he had 2 bars, and only then provide him with the terrible news. The next day, driving back, Mr. Khalid finally called Joyce, hoping for the answering machine, and said, "Hello, Joyce," when he answered. Joyce listened patiently to Mr. Khalid, receiving the particulars of his mother's change, just as the day's sentinel bees, wrapped loosely in thin polyester bags and tied with a simple overhand knot, began to land in driveways around the city. Tearful in placing the handset into the cradle, Joyce heard the paperman's engine belt screeching and covered his ears. At the sound of a paper hitting the sidewalk at an angle sufficient to create 3 tumbling arcs, and then a loud swish of 3mm plastic plowing through very, very bright green grass, Joyce covered his eyes and looked into the mirror by the door. He saw many things, remembered many things, and wished for many things. He opened his eyes and saw the number 1, and then a 0, another 0, and another, and another, and another. He ran out the front door, followed by zeros, kicked the paper, rounded the house, uprooted the lavender, jerked open the basement door, ran to the very back, dove into the root cellar cum tornado room, burrowed into a mound of cool sweet potatoes, found Lila's tiny, empty black coffin, and held it across the doorway, catching zeros, one after the other. "I did nothing of the sort," said Curtis, but not politely. Curtis did not care for Mr. Khalid, and Mr. Khalid did not care for Curtis. But what took the cake from Curtis were the little curly objects found on the rim of Evelyn's toilet on the day of her change. Not until the paramedics came to take Evelyn to the funeral home, just a few blocks distant, did anyone suspect foul play regarding Evelyn's condition. Having been in her particular way for 2 or 3 hours and having assumed an acute concavity, Evelyn's long, stiff, and banana-like shape proved hard to load onto the stretcher, especially with that shiny bag of flesh wobbling between her thighs. The nursing home physician, who could never sleep or remember the colors of the rainbow in order, had, during a short but frenetic career as an obstetrician, been privy to witness another example of what he described as wacky womb or everted uterus among the learned. On closer examination, he pointed out to Mr. Khalid and Debbie D., who was planning to become an LPN if she could afford the textbooks, that not only had the vagina, cervix, and uterus flowed from Evelyn onto the bed, but that it had carried along with it Evelyn's bladder and ureters, the P-tubes, as he explained to Debbie D. Everyone who saw Evelyn's condition that day agreed that it struck them. Upon exiting the very warm bathroom that morning and approaching the door leading to the long hallway, and stepping into the hallway fixed with salmon tile walls and yellow shag carpet, which always caught the wheels of the IV poles, Curtis had run into Debbie D. holding a fresh towel and, according to Debbie D., wound up doing what she described as a tango in the doorway with Curtis. Focused on her duty to provide privacy to Evelyn's condition, Debbie D. disentangled herself from the akimbo Curtis, who then walked in a long, slow stride to the kitchen, where, without a word, he began helping Miss Carfield peel potatoes. After placing the towel across Evelyn's change, Debbie D. noticed that the toilet seemed to be coughing. The light was on, and what she saw made the back of her throat tickle. Passing a shuttered orphanage, or something very like a shuttered orphanage, Joyce looked up from his big hands and at the empty seat beside him. The white-haired man was gone. Joyce had a big wet spot on his shirt, a shirt filled with circles. He had dropped his crunchy crunch. He looked over at his mother, and she turned his way, glancing first at the girls, then touching her eyes to his. The bus hummed along nicely as if it were driving itself, rarely breaking 50 miles an hour. Joyce stood to pick up the small, brittle bits of crunchiness. He sat back down and thought about sitting in the devil's chair for perspective, but decided not to. A big black bird with wings flew down, looked in the window with one eye, and swooped away. At a gas station, Evelyn lined up her children and led them off the bus for a splash of cold water and 2 lemon sodas, one for the girls and one to share with Joyce. Back on the bus, the devil's chair remained empty, and within 2 hours the silver tube of people arrived in Tuscaloosa 10 minutes earlier than expected. Evelyn, Joyce, and the girls made an orderly line and, as usual, walked to to the foot-long hot dog cart and ate standing to aid digestion. "Joyce, you hold my hand, and girls, please walk in front," said Evelyn. "Slow down, girls, please. Moist little girls make father nervous, and father becomes anxious." Inside a white room stained with fluorescent light, Evelyn's husband Gray fiddled with the new Pong machine, waiting for someone he knew. A bright white dot traveled in certain directions. Bright white bars slid up and down. Sometimes the dot hit the bars. When the dot hit a bar, a sound. Gray loved Pong. The 47 residents loved Pong. The LPN and 2 nurses' aides loved Pong as well. But Pong could not give baths, roused-cheeked Thorazine, or comb hair, and Gray often felt dirty, a little bit crazy, and did not like to touch his hair, but he enjoyed speaking with Pong about fabric and gazing into its thick, thoughtful glass. "Father," said Joyce. This would be the last time that Evelyn and the girls would ever see father again. The plumber was called, and Mr. Khalid and his wife left town for a few days to visit the warm springs of Georgia. Mr. Khalid carried with him the last will and testament of Evelyn Howard, which left to Baxter's assisted living and long-term care $237,000 in cash, a yellow cedar-shingled ranch home on a very nice corner lot, perfect for raising children, a customized van, and the proceeds of a life insurance policy valued at $125,000, just before her condition changed. Curtis had been let go for obvious reasons, and decided not to leave town. Evelyn's room looked just like brand new, except for the missing commode. The plumber was not a doctor and did not like what he found jammed into the toilet. Carefully wrapped in plastic and stapled inside a paper bag, the dried, bloody thing was taken away in a sheriff's car and delivered to a lab at the nearby University Medical Center. Joyce had to bear this shock in addition to Evelyn's condition, and the postman could not do enough for him. Having no more than speculation of something untoward having happened to Evelyn Howard, and not being privy to what the plumber found, the blogs and papers and channels moved on to Boy Scout incidents and interstate accidents, one of which involved a man from Hoover named Joyce Howard, who apparently, while speeding, lost control of a modified van near the town of Warm Springs, Georgia. He did not die, and even though he received a deep thigh bruise and sustained a sizable gash to the top of his head, paramedics were forced to chase him as he ran up the interstate, barely able to avoid being hit by a variety of automobiles. Before being carted away to his new home in Tuscaloosa, he spent the night in an emergency room, tied to a stretcher, pulling at his gown and calling out to someone only he could see. Once a man, twice a baby, over and over until his throat closed, leaving his mouth poised in a permanent 0. So, a tragedy in the nursing home with Miss Evelyn Howard. Very mysterious, unless you pay close attention. Yeah, please comment, join the channel, and like if you would. Thank you.